Joe Biden is in Tel Aviv, but his efforts to bring down tensions in the war between Israel and Hamas faced massive setbacks even before he departed for West Asia. Jordan called off the president's planned summit with Arab leaders after a deadly explosion at a Gaza hospital which killed hundreds. As the crisis spirals, the Iranian foreign minister is in the Saudi city of Jeddah for an emergency meeting of OIC nations. Now, the role of Saudi Arabia remains hugely sensitive here. Some analysts suggest moves to normalize the kingdom's own relationship with Israel could have been one of the motivations for the attack by Hamas. There are a lot of speculations here. This is one of them. The emergency meeting of OIC nations becomes critical in this context. Remember, in March, Tehran and Riyadh agreed to re-establish relations after years of hostility, and US was definitely driving the two nations closer. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza blamed an Israeli airstrike. The Israeli military on its side said it had no involvement and pinned the blame on a misfired Palestinian rocket. Jordan's foreign minister said, and I'm quoting here, "This war and this aggression are pushing the region to the brink." He stated Jordan would only host the summit when all participants agreed on its purpose, which would be to stop the war and respect the humanity of Palestinians. Now, while still en route, while still in the air, Biden released a statement saying that he was outraged and deeply saddened by the explosion at the hospital and the terrible loss of life that resulted. He said he spoke immediately after hearing the news with King Abdullah II of Jordan and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Netanyahu is blaming barbaric terrorists, but Biden has directed his national security team to continue gathering information about what exactly happened. Now, the cancellation of the Jordan leg of the trip reflects an increasingly volatile situation that will test the limits of American influence in the region. Russia and the United Arab Emirates called for an emergency UN Security Council meeting. UN chief called for immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Israel-Hamas conflict. Speaking at the Belt and Road Initiative Forum in China, Antonio Guterres stated that Hamas attacks can not justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
I am horrified by the hundreds of people killed at Al-Ahli Hospital this same day in Gaza by a strike that I strongly condemned earlier today. I call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire to provide sufficient time and space to help realize my two appeals and to ease the epic human suffering we are witnessing. Too many lives and the fate of the entire region hang on the balance. May the spirit of this meeting help those that need to find peace.
All right. To understand this further, our correspondent Jody Cohen has sent us this report from Renana on what to expect from Biden's visit to Israel. Take a look at this.
As President Biden visits Israel for meetings with Prime Minister Netanyahu and other senior Israeli officials, first on the agenda is likely to be the Gaza Hospital explosion, which Hamas quickly blamed on Israel. The Israel Defense Forces spokesperson Daniel Hagari has confirmed that video evidence will be shown to President Biden that the explosion came from Islamic Jihad misfire and not from an Israeli strike. The spokesperson accused Hamas of intentionally misleading international media, reading out what he said was a translated transcript of an intercepted call between Hamas officials, in which they acknowledged the failed Islamic Jihad rocket. The president is also likely to be shown evidence of Hamas atrocities in the 7th of October attack, as well as details about the 199 hostages held by Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza. According to the White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby, President Biden is expected to meet with the families of people killed. They're also likely to discuss the IDF announcement of a humanitarian zone in southwest Gaza, as well as Jerusalem's strategy in the Gaza war. This is Jody Cohen for WION World is One.
All right, to discuss matters further, I'm being joined now live by WION's correspondent Siddhant Sibal, who's reporting live from Tel Aviv as of now. Siddhant, anytime a diplomatic meeting gets cancelled, it's never a good sign. The optics look really bad, and it has all happened at a really bad time for Joe Biden. He was expecting he was definitely expecting more from this meeting. Do you feel US will be able to achieve anything now that Joe Biden has arrived in Israel and has already been shunned by 3 Arab leaders?
Well, let's see what happens or transpires in the next few hours. Well, let's see what the governments are able to achieve. But the family members here of many of them who have been kidnapped, many of them who have lost their friends, are hoping that President Biden will be able to find some kind of solution. Let's speak to some of them. Ma'am, welcome to WION from here, from Tel Aviv. My question to you is if you can talk about the grief you're going through, and perhaps many family members are also missing. If you can talk about that as well. I can see a lot of family members staging protests here.
Yes, thank you. We are here a group of women from Women Who Wage Peace. We are peace activists, and we have friends, very dear friends, which are now in Gaza. They have been kidnapped, and Vivian Silver and Ditza Heyman. And we are very much worried about their state, and obviously about the state of all the kidnapped people. And we are waiting very great hope that this will end soon. And we emphasize that a war solution for the kidnaps is not a good solution. We want that there will be discussions and that the kidnapped will be returned without anybody losing their life over it.
Are you hopeful President Biden's visit will be able to diffuse the situation, and some hope on the release of the hostages as well, ma'am?
We are very grateful to the United States for being involved in this conflict, and we hope in their assistance we all can return to a regular and quiet life and try to recuperate from this disaster that has met us in great surprise.
So that's the view from the ground here in Tel Aviv, where the family members, the loved ones have gathered and hoping that there will be some kind of solution. If my camera person can pan and show you the visuals of many of the family members who are now staging protests. But essentially, President Biden has reached here in Tel Aviv. In next few hours, he will be meeting with the top political leadership. There's a restricted meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. There's a meeting with the president. He's expected to also meet with the family members of these hostages as well. He was expected to travel to Jordan. Now that visit is cancelled amidst the explosion in the hospital in Gaza. We have seen global condemnation as well, but both sides, the Israeli side and the Palestinian side, are trading blames as to who has done it. There are conflicting reports as to how and why it happened, but essentially the situation on the ground remains quite fluid and dynamic, and of course worrisome as well.
Siddhant, it's extremely unfortunate to hear the families of those who have been kidnapped, and they're still waiting to hear from their loved ones. And I know you're traveling, and you're of course there in Tel Aviv tracking all the developments. I also want to just, get your thoughts on this. Joe Biden mentioned that America will do its own investigation on the Gaza Hospital strike. Does this reflect some kind of lack of trust between US and Israel?
Well, it is primarily to make sure that one is a neutral arbitrator. In this current conflict, there are very few neutral arbitrators, and essentially, if the Americans are to believe publicly the Israeli side, that raises questions about America. Now we have seen the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken traveling to many capitals in the region. He was in Tel Aviv twice. He traveled to other countries in the region, and hope that there is some kind of solution to the ongoing conflict. But the explosion at the Gaza hospital has increased worries over where the escalation could happen. We have seen the comments coming from the Iranian side saying that this is the end, and this is something they have been warning about. But essentially, if the region gets engulfed in some kind of major conflict, that is a bad news for the entire world, when the world is already facing the concerns over the Ukraine conflict.
Siddhant, just one more thing I want to take your thoughts on. I see a lot of American flags behind you as well, and Israeli flags being held side to side. Does the US president's visit to Israel bring a ray of hope, or some kind of, does it help the regular Israelis? We heard from the two ladies you spoke with, but from what you've gathered from ground, tell us what the sentiment is like.
the sentiment is a mixed sentiment.